Hey everybody, how are you doing? My name is Iris Sowlat and I am the director of Romeo and Juliet here at Accidental Shakespeare Company. So in today's episode of our video series, I'm going to talk about why a queer Romeo and Juliet. And I guess the answer is, why not a queer Romeo and Juliet? So as many of you know, if you followed my career, I'm a gay director, and just like a lot of the work I do is inherently queer art, because that's who I am and that is a lens through which I see the world. But it also runs so much deeper than that. I when many of us first got our first introduction to theater, I think that something that attracts just a lot of folks to theater as well as to storytelling and stories in general is the concept of really being seen as your authentic self and just seeing other people who are similar to you or different and who are their authentic selves, and how that kind of seeing and being seen really cultivates that just deeper level of empathy. Like oftentimes, so many people get into theater because it is the space where they feel like they can be themselves. They can be like loud and blunt and sparkly, or quiet and non-sparkly, and being just their authentic selves. And a lot of people have moments of like seeing plays or reading stories or seeing movies when they're like, oh, that's me. I can relate to that. Kind of like in the Ring of Keys moment in Fun Home when young Alison Bechdel sees the like lesbian delivery woman, and she has this song about how like she knows that woman is just like her, even though she doesn't know the word gay yet, and just how important it was for like so many queer kids seeing that song at the Tony Awards in 2015. In like the first Broadway play starring like a real lesbian character. So it is that like deeper level of like relatability and just seeing somebody who's like you and being seen for yourself that draws a lot of people to theater. I love Romeo and Juliet. Growing up, I loved Shakespeare. I devoured most of Shakespeare's whole canon of work. Romeo and Juliet was definitely my favorite Shakespeare play. To me, I really picked up on how Romeo and Juliet really loved each other. Like their love mattered. Their love is so much deeper than those memes about how, oh, there are these two teenagers who were 13 and they were in love for 3 days and this killed 7 people. It's so much deeper than that. And like you can tell because it is right there in the text. The way that they complete each other's sentences, the way that like their poetry and their rhyme schemes and their language and the specific metaphors and similes they use together just is really like beautifully in sync. Like that language is Shakespeare's way of saying that they're actually soulmates, at least in this moment. And like, even if their relationship may not have lasted in the long run, it mattered to them in those 3 days. And that's why it matters. So in thinking about the story I wanted to tell, it's like, in the original text in Verona, Romeo and Juliet couldn't love each other because they were from these two warring families. And similarly to that, it's like up until very, very recently in history, LGBT people couldn't love each other, at least not publicly, especially not publicly, because of who they are and who they loved. Yeah, and like, so as a gay person, growing up, I loved Shakespeare. I loved Romeo and Juliet. I didn't really come out until my early 20s. And I feel like part of that was just not fully realizing I was gay until my late teens, because like there wasn't really a ton of depictions of queer women in the media, almost none in theater. And I didn't really see kind of that like affirmation or that relatability of like, oh, this is what it's like to be like how I am. Luckily, in the last few years, there's been like a huge boom of representation of all parts of the LGBT rainbow in media and including in theater. But that really wasn't the case growing up. So in casting this Romeo and Juliet, I didn't specifically yet intend for them to be an LGBT couple, but I knew that I wanted the casting scheme to definitely carry meaning, and for somebody to say, oh, that's me. I never get portrayed as like a love interest in a canon classic Shakespeare piece, but that's me. So yeah. So at auditions, the artistic director at the time, James Anthony, started asking actors, which roles do you want to play? And when they started asking them that, I immediately thought, oh, that's such a brilliant question to ask. And I started asking the same thing. And I just like started writing down exactly what the actors were saying. Because to me, just getting to ask the actors who they want to play in the room is just like super duper like revolutionary and also empowering. So we just started asking that question and I started writing down everyone who every actor said they wanted to play. And sometimes the answers really surprised me. Like there were actors who you would not normally think would be interested in playing Romeo or Juliet who gave beautiful answers for why they wanted to play those characters. And likewise for characters like Tybalt and Mercutio and even Friar Lawrence and the nurse. And that was just really cool to engage with the actors on that level. Yeah, so when I was casting, we did end up casting actors who made Romeo and Juliet a queer couple. And I think that there is something just super wonderful and just affirming and needed about seeing a Romeo and Juliet who are queer women and or AFAB non-binary people who are portraying these characters exactly as Shakespeare wrote them, not in like a parody, not in like an original version of the story, although those types of shows are amazing as well, but who are authentically playing this beautiful, authentic love story and are doing it as themselves and as their full selves. And just that theme of like wanting to really see people as they are and just have people feel empowered to play who they want to play. I mean, obviously, we also then put the actors through callbacks and cast the best people for the roles, obviously. We didn't just say, oh, here's a role. But asking the actors at initial auditions, who do you want to play, and calling them back for those characters really opened up this just beautiful, beautiful set of casting possibilities. Like, I do think that we cast the best actors for the roles, and every actor brought so much to their role. Every actor loves the role that they're playing. And the vast majority of this cast are women and non-binary people. And like, I originally didn't necessarily intend to say, okay, I'm going to make this cast being mostly women and non-binary people. They were just, the actors we cast were actually the best people for the roles. But looking at it, it's just so cool that you might see somebody watching this Romeo and Juliet who doesn't really often see themselves in certain roles in the canon. And you might have like a young girl who's like, oh, I've always wanted to play Romeo or Mercutio or like even Friar Lawrence, which is usually never a possibility for young girls to play, and being like, oh, that's me, I can play that role. Or like a non-binary actor being like, oh wow, I wish there was a place for me playing a character like Tybalt or Mercutio or Juliet, and finding, oh, I can. Look, they're doing that right now. So to me, that is why I cast this show. That is why I cast the cast who I did, and I made the couple a queer Romeo and Juliet, because our love matters. All of our identities matter. I love being able to see queer love really come alive with this language, and to have actors really get the chance to play these characters as themselves and to celebrate their authentic selves. So please tune in for our 5 episodes of Romeo and Juliet on our YouTube channel here with Accidental Shakespeare Company. Thank you, and have an amazing rest of your day.